I woke up buried. True accounts of people trapped between life and death. Beneath the earth, silence suffocates. Imagine waking with no breath left to scream, realizing the final goodbye wasn't final at all. Across America, there are chilling accounts of people declared dead only to awaken buried, trapped, and unseen. But the most terrifying part isn't the darkness, it's what watches from within it. These are not stories of death, but of being caught between worlds, where the living do not belong. Terrifying. In every obituary, there's a moment where the heart is believed to stop. Machines flatline, doctors pronounce endings, and families mourn. Yet for some, consciousness lingers like a spark refusing to dim. These are the stories of those who woke beneath soil and wood, trapped in a nightmare that disguised itself as death. The first account comes from a rural Kentucky man named Samuel Price, who found himself breathing again only when the coffin lid pressed against his nose. Samuel had lived a quiet life as a carpenter. In his late 50s, his health began to decline from what everyone assumed was a heart condition. One night, after dinner, he collapsed before his wife could call for help. Paramedics tried to revive him, but after repeated attempts, they called his time of death. A wake was arranged swiftly, family grieving through shock and disbelief. Samuel remembered none of that. His last clear moment from life was seeing his wife's face blurred by tears. Then, darkness. A deep numbness wrapped around him, silence sinking into him like cold water. He thought it was death. That eternity was nothing. But then he inhaled. Air scraped his lungs like sandpaper. His arms were pinned tight to his sides. Fingers brushed something smooth and wooden. He tried to sit up, smashing his forehead against a barrier inches above. His chest thudded violently, pumping terror through every vein. The confined space pressed against him as if the earth itself wanted to swallow him whole. He screamed, or thought he did, but the sound died in his throat. The air was thin. Every breath felt borrowed. He clawed at the wood. His nails splintered as he scraped. Panic punched through him. He could hear something, a faint shifting, like soil settling above him. He wondered if worms already sensed him as part of the earth. He prayed. Not for salvation, but for unconsciousness. Time stretched into a torment of seconds that refused to pass. Samuel's mind fractured between memory and fear. He pictured his wife standing above ground, unaware her husband kicked at his own tomb. Then he heard it, a whisper. A soft voice from beyond the wood, not outside but inside with him. "You weren't supposed to wake," it breathed. Samuel froze. The presence pressed closer, suffocating the already thin space. It brushed his cheek. No hand, no flesh, only a cold that stung like winter against bone. He tried holding still, but the coffin seemed smaller, the air tighter, as if the thing beside him grew larger. Something slid across his legs, slow and intentional. He thrashed violently, kicking, banging, fighting for possibility. The coffin rocked. Dirt shifted. He felt weight shift downward. Someone above had noticed. Shouts echoed. Tools struck earth. Samuel's eyes rolled back, lungs burning. As the lid cracked open and sunlight sliced in, he gasped a final breath of panic before fainting. When he awoke in a hospital, family trembling with relief, he refused to speak about the whisper. He never returned to carpentry, never slept without lights on. And his wife said he sometimes woke with dirt under his fingernails, even years later. The second account comes from Arizona. A college student named Marisol was found unconscious in her apartment after a severe allergic reaction. A close friend visited, discovered her unresponsive, and called ambulance services. Marisol was pronounced dead at the hospital after attempts to resuscitate her failed. Her family, living out of state, agreed to a closed casket burial. For Marisol, death felt like sinking underwater. Sounds faded, vision clouded, but she remained aware. She could hear machines beeping until the noise slipped into silence. The world dimmed, but she didn't disappear. She drifted in a dreamlike fog, seeing flashes of her life like distant stars. Laughter, sunlight, her mother's voice on the phone just days earlier. Then there was a sensation, movement. The shift of her body being transported. Doors closing. A vehicle rumbling. She tried to speak, but her mouth refused command. Then a stillness. A terrible quiet. She awakened suddenly, as if someone had snapped their fingers. Her eyes remained shut, but she sensed confinement pressing in. The smell of roses clung to the air, too sweet, too strong. Her hands rested over her stomach, positioned without her consent. She tried lifting them but couldn't move. Paralysis pinned her like invisible nails. She listened, straining. Soft crying. Voices murmuring. She recognized one. Her brother. The reality cracked through her shock. They were mourning her. They believed she was dead. She tried screaming. No sound left her throat. Then, something new replaced panic. A presence below, beneath the coffin, or within it. A hum of breath not her own. A heaviness, like a second body sharing the same narrow space. She could feel warmth near her ankles that slowly traveled upward. The rose's scent curdled into something rotten. The presence's weight pressed across her legs, creeping toward her chest. She pleaded silently for help, for movement, for anything. The coffin seemed to shift as though the thing inside adjusted its position. A whisper crawled into her ear. "Stay. You belong here." The pressure spread across her ribs, squeezing. Her heart surged, defiant. She felt a single finger twitch. Then another. A sharp gasp leaked from her throat, barely audible, but enough. Outside, voices halted. Someone shouted her name. The coffin rattled as hands scrambled to open it. When the lid finally lifted, her eyes tore open with a scream that shredded the silence. The funeral staff insisted it was a miracle. Doctors blamed a rare medical condition. Her family embraced her as if returned from another world. But Marisol's nightmares insisted otherwise. She claimed she never escaped that coffin fully. Shadows followed her into daylight. She often woke unable to move, the smell of roses choking her, the pressure returning to her chest as something unseen waited for the moment she could no longer fight. Two people, separated by miles and lives, yet bound by the same horror, awakening where no living soul should be. What trapped them in those moments may have been a body struggling to survive. But what they felt with them, whispering things meant for the dead, suggests something far worse lurks between life and death, watching those who hover too closely to the other side. Survivors of such ordeals describe the same sensations, the crushing weight of the earth above and something sharing the confined darkness with them. A presence patient enough to wait for a final heartbeat. Medical records may explain the return to life, but they cannot explain the voices. They cannot explain the cold touch in sealed coffins or the shifting of space when no room exists to shift. As unbelievable as their accounts sound, the terror in their eyes when recalling these moments is undeniable. They know death wasn't alone down there, waiting for its turn. There are those who face death once and return, shaken but unharmed. Then there are those who are dragged into the in-between, where the living and the dead share breath for a fleeting, horrifying moment. Their escapes are not miracles but accidents, interruptions of something ancient that prefers silence beneath the earth. The third account comes from the coal mining valleys of West Virginia. A young miner named Daniel Reed experienced what experts called a workplace accident. He remembered descending underground early one morning, lanterns flickering through dust-coated tunnels. The air tasted stale, heavy with warnings. Hours later, a section of the mine collapsed. Daniel never saw the rock fall. He only felt the skull-rattling blow and then, crushing, unrelenting darkness. He believed he was dead, but death did not feel like sleeping. His lungs still fought for air. Dirt pressed against his chest, pinning him. He tried to scream, but the earth swallowed the sound. Terror sharpened his senses. This was no coffin. This was a grave dug by disaster. Minutes or hours passed, time dissolved in terror. His fingertips scraped against stone and roots, searching for escape. Then, in that suffocating pitch black, he realized he was not alone. Breathing. Slow, heavy, animalistic breathing. He held still, suspending his own breath to listen. The sound came from inches away, too controlled to be panic, too deliberate to be human. The ground vibrated with its movement, as though claws or fingers dragged through soil. Daniel's heart pounded violently, convinced the darkness had teeth. He remembered children's tales miners whispered, of something ancient beneath the mountains, a guardian of the dead that punished those who stole from the black earth. The story resurfaced as if invited by the silence. The breathing drew closer. Warm, damp air brushed his cheek. A realization struck. This creature had not arrived after the collapse. It had been waiting. Daniel forced his numb limbs to move. He shoved upward with frantic desperation, pushing loose soil aside. His fingers found a small pocket of air near a support beam. He wrenched himself through it, screaming without sound. A low growl echoed behind him, the earth trembling as something massive shifted. His hands broke through to space above. He clawed at debris until miners spotted movement. They dug frantically, pulling him out moments before his chest collapsed from pressure. Daniel survived, but he never returned underground. He spoke little of what he encountered, only that some workers who died never rested where their bodies lay. He believed something beneath the surface waited for the living to join the dead, and he had narrowly denied it. The fourth account has become one of the most referenced in medical communities. It concerns a middle-aged woman from Illinois named Eleanor Hayes. After suffering cardiac arrest at home, Eleanor was pronounced dead at a local hospital. The medical team, citing time and lack of response, followed protocol. Her body was moved to the morgue for preparation. Eleanor's family was overwhelmed with grief. Funeral arrangements began quickly. An issue with the crematorium schedule delayed the process by several hours, leaving Eleanor alone in a cold drawer where stillness dominated. Inside her mind, she felt suspended in a strange limbo. Her thoughts drifted through memories, children's laughter, her husband's smile, but an intrusive awareness crept in. She could hear faint metallic creaks and the distant hum of machines. Her eyelids felt glued shut. Her body refused every command. Then came the sense of presence. Something suffocatingly close. Not a person, not breathing, but aware. She felt fingers brushing lightly across her ribs, a searching touch that seemed to count her bones. The cold drawer vibrated with a sound like whispering frost. The air chilled, stabbing through her skin. She forced herself to remain calm, hoping it was a hallucination. But the presence grew heavier, as if leaning over her with curiosity. A pressure built in her skull. Her heartbeat, a pulse she thought had ceased, thudded in sudden panic. She was alive again, fully conscious. Instinct screamed for movement, but only a single tear escaped the corner of her eye. That single tear saved her. A morgue technician noticed the subtle glimmer on her cheek while retrieving paperwork. His shock tore open the drawer, calling others for help. Eleanor gasped violently, her first breath a knife of burning cold. The room exploded in emergency action. But as they revived her, Eleanor's gaze drifted past the mortuary lights to the far corner where shadows gathered unnaturally. She felt watched by something disappointed, something patient enough to wait for her return. She later described sensations no physiological explanation could account for, icy hands tracing her spine, whispers threading through her ribs, a presence that followed her home despite sunlight. She refused cremation papers with trembling hands, insisting she had already glimpsed the fire meant to claim her. These accounts raise a chilling question. What stirs in the space between death declared and death fulfilled? Medical experts offer conditions like Lazarus syndrome or catalepsy, but none explain the predatory silence that accompanies those brief journeys underground or into cold storage. When they woke, a living nightmare replaced death's promise of peace. They emerged different, haunted by memories born in the dark. Each survivor carried with them something they could not name but constantly felt. A pressure just outside vision, a shuffle beneath the bed, a shadow hovering near the chest during sleep. The boundary between life and death is thin, like a membrane stretched too tight. Most cross it only once. But some brush so close that they slip into a place the living were never meant to occupy, a place that notices when someone overstays. Across America, stories like these circulate quietly, shared in hospital break rooms or among miners by lantern light. No one wants to believe them possible. Yet the evidence rests not in data but in survivors' eyes, eyes that hold a terror deeper than the grave. Each testimony echoes the same truth. There is something that welcomes those pronounced dead. It watches for mistakes and waits for silence. It does not forgive interruptions. For those fortunate enough to escape, death becomes less frightening than what waits with it. There is no comfort in knowing that your final moment might not be final. No comfort in imagining awakening beneath soil or steel with a companion no doctor can detect. No comfort in realizing that burial is not just a ritual of farewell but an invitation. Those who return carry the warning in trembling voices: they were not alone down there. Something cold, ancient, and starving lingered inches away, disappointed when breath returned and time pulled its prey back to light. Even now, some survivors claim they wake at night feeling a familiar pressure upon their chests, as though hands of soil are trying once more to pull them under, fulfilling the ritual that was interrupted. They fear darkness not because it hides death, but because it remembers them. If you think death is peaceful, think again. Many return from the other side changed, convinced something followed them back, waiting for the next moment of stillness. Before you lie down tonight, remember how easily the living can slip beneath the earth. If you dare to explore more true-style horrors like this, subscribe and stay with us.